Everybody, this is Evan Brand back with the Not Just Paleo podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Just a couple reminders before we get into the episode. You can meet me back at notjustpaleo.com, where you'll find a bunch of fitness tips, information on vitamins and supplements, ways to get better sleep, ways to improve your office life, things like going to rainymood.com, and you can listen to rain in the background as you work on your computer with headphones. Just simple changes like that. That's the reason that Not Just Paleo is here. We're trying to improve your life with small changes and get you on a more primal lifestyle. And it could be in a roundabout way. Maybe you're not able to work outside, but we're just going to be focused on doing what you can to improve your life. So thanks for tuning into this episode. And you can also find me at facebook.com/notjustpaleo, as well as twitter.com/notjustpaleo. So I'm super excited for this episode today. It was with Abel James from Fat Burning Man, and I hope you enjoy the show, and feel free to send in some questions because we'll love to hear from you. Enjoy the show.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate it again. It's awesome to be able to get you to slow down for a minute and hang out with me, man.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, let's get into it. Hey, everybody. We're back with the Not Just Paleo podcast. This is episode 14. So today we have another awesome guest, one of Jimmy Moore's buddies in the paleo and fitness community, Abel James from fatburningman.com. So, Abel, thank you so much for coming to the show, man.
Thanks so much for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, this is great. Abel has gotten extremely busy, so for him to be able to slow down and quit sprinting and hang out with us is definitely my pleasure, man. So let's get into.
It's my pleasure too.
Let's go ahead and just get an introduction from you for the people that are not coming from your side and are coming from mine. Let them figure out who you are and why they should check you out.
Sure, man. So I started in, as I was telling you before, in the backwoods of New Hampshire. Grew up in the middle of nowhere, so always had an appreciation. My mom was into alternative medicine and holistic health, and so there was this thing about living off the land and eating weeds and using all sorts of weird tinctures and balms whenever we got sick instead of traditional medicine. And so there was always that kind of ingrained in me from the start. And so I went down the vegetarian path for a while, and it worked fine for a while there in my teens. When I got into my 20s, though, I started to have some health effects, and I was eating really low fat, quite a bit of soy. I was focusing a lot on my macronutrients instead of necessarily eating real food. And it kind of all came to a head. I was working in consulting, and I came home one night, and my apartment building was up in a 30-foot wall of flames, and lost everything, essentially. And so I needed some sort of way forward and something to focus on. And after eating low fat for a long time, which means necessarily eating high carb, basically I was gaining weight. Every time I went to the doctor, I had some new terrible health thing like kidney stones or skin problems, or I couldn't sleep. And so with everything in my life out of my control, I figured that the one thing that I could focus on and really get under control, if I learned enough about it, was health and fitness. And so I spent a few years dabbling in bodybuilding forums and reading medical journals and every book that I could get my hands on, trying to learn everything I could about nutrition and fitness and health. And what I found was that most of the things that I was doing before were the complete opposite of what good science says you should do for good health and good performance and et cetera.
Right. Yeah, you wouldn't think that you would have to distrust the magazines at the grocery store that show you how to gain 30 pounds of muscle in a day. I kind of did the same thing, man, just thinking that was the answer, and it actually is very dangerous to do what they recommend, all the mainstream, you know?
It's a shame because a lot of those magazines, it turns out, are owned by the supplement companies, and the advertisements that you see in like conventional media. There's a lot of hand holding and back scratching that goes on there that definitely doesn't bring the best interest of the consumer, like people like you and I, to the mix. It's based upon profit, unfortunately, as opposed to actually educating the people who are trying to be educated.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. That's why I'm proud of all the different grassroots small companies that are coming up with protein bars, which I'm not too big of a fan of protein bars, but just all these different small companies that are popping up with high quality supplements. It's awesome because you can't, those magazines are literally pure ads for stuff like, what is it, 1,3 dimethylene? Is that the main thing that's in
all
those pre-workouts?
Those things. Yep.
So... Well, yeah, so I guess we'll go into your fitness because I guess your main focus, obviously being fat burning, man, is about fitness. And I tell people diet is amazing. And if you just got here to paleo, that's awesome. I think 2013 is a huge turning point for it as far as gaining attention, don't you think?
Oh, totally. Yeah, we're definitely riding that wave. I think when I started getting into this a few years ago, thinking about what you ate wasn't cool at all, and now it's like starting to be cool to like want to be healthy and stuff, you know?
Right. Yeah, I think being over analytical about the thing with portion sizes and stuff like that stresses people out, which me and Jimmy talked about too. So I think you're probably on board with taking a very strict but calm approach to the whole thing and trying to keep stress down to a minimum too. For
stress
cortisol.
Stress is the worst. I mean, like one of the biggest reasons that my health fell apart when it did, like during the fires, just because my life was such a mess, like, and cortisol was through the roof.
Right.
So yeah, everything that you can do to maintain a positive lifestyle, like having a lifestyle and keeping your stress low and cortisol low is, in some ways a lot more important than what you're even eating or how you're exercising. It's super important. It's something that like not many people really focus on.
Right. Yeah, I think stress is just I see how people could get stressed because since a lot of people are new to it, I think some people are getting overwhelmed. I've had a couple people ask me which plan is the best as far as fitness and how strict should I really be, and I think people are getting stressed out from it. So what do you recommend as far as how strict are you in the beginning for all your patients and clients?
Yeah, so the best plan is the one that works for the person who's following it.
Absolutely.
That sounds all nebulous and squishy, but it's so true. I mean, there are many effective tactics when it comes to losing fat or increasing muscle, but it's all about action. I mean, it doesn't matter how much you know, unless you do it. Yeah, and you need to do it often and consistently and work on some lifestyle factors. So my whole approach is, when it comes to nutrition, which is my main focus, is eating plenty of fat, and basing your whole nutritional strategy on the ancestral framework. So starting out from what our ancestors were eating before the advent of agriculture, but also looking at some of the advances that we've made in science, as well as combining that with your own food allergies and sensitivities and intolerances, basically subtracting those out, and then coming up with your own personal plan for what works best for you, your lifestyle, your metabolism, and your body type.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Abel, for bringing that up, man. I think that's important because being too strict will definitely just stress you out, and you won't be able to – I don't think you'll be able to hang on to it for the long term. I think you'll burn yourself out.
And that's why, when people start this, like they start any diet, most people, it's 90% plus people regain the weight within that year. And I think that's because a lot of people don't have that mental focus. They don't have that, I guess, the discipline to know that it has to be a lifestyle change. It needs to be new habits. I mean, you look at someone like Jimmy Moore, he is very strict, but he also takes like a pretty laid back approach to it. When he makes changes, he thinks about what's going to happen beforehand. He kind of like visualizes the outcome, and then he rides that train, the whole way. He doesn't just kind of go there and give up.
Right. What are your couple of, I guess, consistency tips that you would give to people just to be able to stay through it for the long haul rather than burn yourself out?
Make your food as delicious as possible.
That's awesome.
That's a promise that I made to myself a while back. Last night we had garlic rosemary lamb with dino kale with macadamia nuts and macadamia nut oil and some balsamic vinegar with Japanese sweet potato fries drenched in butter, and then chocolate and wine.
Whoa, man.
And that's like, it sounds like that would take a long time to do. It took us, 20, 30 minutes tops to put all that stuff together. And of course, we don't do that every night, but we do it as often as we can, just making food delicious. And when you look at what's actually contained in there, I mean, that's pretty high fat, plenty of green veggies, which is what I recommend that people follow. And then since I had actually just worked out last night, I got back I do Krav Maga, which is a Israeli self-defense type class. Since I just got back, I had a few carbs in the sweet potato. But if you look at it, that's a very paleo style meal, and one that's relatively low in carbohydrates, and certainly with the amount of fat that I'm eating, that's blunting the spike in blood sugar. So it sounds like it's a luxurious meal, and it tastes like one, but what it does to your body is all good stuff, and it definitely fits into like my dietary plan. So that's one thing you can do, is make your food as delicious as possible, because you're going to stick with it. If you like it, you're going to stick with it. And if you're eating out of Tupperware and like trying not to eat and starving yourself out of calories, or chugging cabbage soup or whatever most people do on diets, you're not going to stick with it, because that sucks.
Absolutely, man. That's awesome. I think that's the reason the paleo recipe books are blowing up, because personally, I'm pretty bland with my food, man. So you're actually kind of, besides making my mouth water, you're motivating me to use more ingredients, because I do take a plain approach. You know, I don't use very many spices or anything, and I'm pre-cook in bulk and basically throw some herbs in there and let it simmer for a while. So,
which is good too. But the thing that really I think gets people to commit to this lifestyle is learning how to navigate the kitchen a little bit, like just enjoying your time making food. Like my buddy George Bryant at Civilized Caveman, he had no idea what he was doing, like a full-time Marine when he started, and he just came back from Afghanistan, and he's just like, I'm going to learn how to cook. And then he learned how to cook, and now he has 46,000 Facebook fans, which is going up like thousands every week or whatever.
Yeah, man.
If he can do it, like everyone else can too. And that's the real secret to maintaining a lean body over time is making sure that you're putting quality food into it constantly. The best way to do that is to cook it yourself.
Hell yeah, man. I think it makes you love cooking too, and I think it's important for the future, and especially in a time that we're in now. It seems like time is spinning faster and faster, and everyone's in more of a rush on the road and just generally going crazy. So I think if you can just pick up a love for cooking like that it'll help you slow down and kind of live more primal, I guess, because I don't think we were ever used to running this fast paced.
Yeah, you shouldn't be sucking down a greasy burrito in the front seat of your car. That's not the way that we're wired to exist.
Absolutely, man. So I guess let's go into a little bit of your meditation too, because stress is awesome if you can handle it, but stress can be deadly if you don't know how to handle it. So
that's right.
You just started getting into meditation. So are you planning like a particular visualization? Are you sitting yoga style, or what are you up to in that?
You know, I've tried a bunch of different things, and I dabbled in meditation before, but it wasn't until I think it was this past December when I really started working it into my habits, because it's intimidating when you first start any new habit, right? When you try to work something into your lifestyle. I was just talking on my podcast with Tim Ferriss recently about how at the beginning of the process, whenever you try to build a new habit, it's important that you make it as awesome as possible and you make it as non-threatening as possible. So, whereas I used to, when I was trying to do meditation, it would be like an hour or 2 hours. That's pretty rough if you're starting out, because it's like, I don't know what to do. I'm not used to it. And so what I promised to do myself was just do it every day, even if it's 2 minutes, just a little bit in the morning. I noticed that my first commitment was that I would do it every day. And I found that if I didn't do it in the morning within like a half an hour of waking up, I might skip it and it might not happen. And so I realized that I need to, no matter what, take about 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes tops every morning. And I cut myself off after 5 minutes, because otherwise I risk like doing it for too long and then not liking it anymore, So since I'm still kind of beginning this whole process, number one, I make sure I do it every day. I do it for a short amount of time. And then while I'm doing it, some days I'll go cross-legged, in the typical yoga pose. Some days I won't. but I always try to focus on my breath, number one, and getting that under control. Breathing slowly and in a very dedicated way. Imagining life coming in. It sounds all woo-woo, but
no way. It sounds awesome, man. Keep going.
Yeah, so you basically taking life in and breathing stress out and breathing all of that baggage that you're carrying around and all those negative thoughts, breathing them out. And so I visualize that in colors too sometimes. Like the stuff that I'm breathing out is black or gray, like smoke. And the stuff I'm breathing in is vibrant and green or yellow or other colors like that. That seems to help me kind of get into that spot. And then let's see. I always try to do it outside if I can. I listen to the birds and the wind, and I'm super type A, thinking all the time. And so all those thoughts that are bouncing around my head, when I first started meditating, I was trying to fight them off, and that doesn't work. You can't like shut your brain off. What you have to do is kind of accept those thoughts, come to terms with them, and then they stop coming quite so much. There was actually a really cool study about this when I was studying brain science back in the day, and there was one group that was told to think about a white polar bear, and there's another group that was told not to think about a white polar bear. And the ones who thought about it more were the group that were told not to think about that white polar bear. And they thought about it like, I don't know what it was, but like 5 times more than the people who were told to think about it. Just because your brain, in order to not think about something, you have to think about it very intently.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's really interesting. So I try to come to terms with my thoughts and just take a relaxed approach, focus on my breath, and then visualize the perfect day.
That's awesome, man. That's the same thing I do, except instead of breathing in green and breathing out black, I think that's awesome too. What I do is I picture my entire body as a thermometer. So you picture the red mercury building up, and this could be your stress, your exhaustion level, or just any bad emotion inside of you. If you just picture your body as a thermometer, and as you exhale, just picture the thermometer dropping, like the temperature's dropping, and then you follow it from your head down to your chest. You take another deep breath, push down, and now the stress is down to your knees, and then you take a final breath, and then breathe out, and it goes out down your knees and out your feet, and then you're basically able to focus, and you can actually take care of your thoughts, like you said.
I like that. I'm gonna have to try that myself.
Yeah, man. So, and it makes you happy. It really does. And
yeah, it's amazing the difference it makes. Even just a few minutes a day, huge difference.
Right, and not only does it eliminate stress for me, but like you said, I think it enables you to analyze your thoughts more. Not so much get them out, but it makes you face them more, because when you're in a rush of cooking or trying to run to the gym or pick up your kids, or you get stuck in daily life struggles of time, when you're in a time crunch like that, when you meditate, I think it really does enable you to dissect everything and say, okay, this is this part of my life, this is this part of my life. That's what works for me.
Absolutely. And when you have that time, I know you do it outside, kind of like in the solitary environment of nature, right? And that's really important too, because you don't often get that in this day and age with cell phones going off and computers blaring at you and cars whizzing by all day. It's really important to take a moment to actually, instead of being something that absorbs stimulus or stimuli, you want to be something that actually creates it, right? Like from your mind, you want to be a place of production, actually creating thoughts instead of being like constantly reacting to everything that's happening around you.
Right. Yeah, I say that if you're not a park person because you live in a city that doesn't have a good park system, still try to get out there and hang out, because I've looked, and a lot of people that I talk to are from Los Angeles, Chicago, and you're down in Austin now. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
So a bunch of big cities, and I bet Austin's parks are awesome. What are they like? Have you been to many?
Oh yeah, I go to them all the time. Growing up in the middle of nowhere, New Hampshire, I just need it. If I don't get that quality time with nature, I go a little bit insane slowly but surely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Austin has something wonderful called the Green Belt, which is just a bunch of different trails that are kind of set back from the city, but also go all through the city. And so even if you are on a busy street, a lot of times you can kind of like pop underneath and just kind of walk through a little park, or at least walk on your way to a park. There's one right next to my house where I take my dog pretty much every day, a lot of times 2 or 3 times a day. And she loves it. And then I have my backyard too. It's not a big one, but there are trees, there's grass, there are birds. It at least is reminiscent of nature, you know?
Yeah.
And so even those little things help a lot.
That's awesome, man. So do you like not having winters now compared to up north, or?
I still have a taste for the winter for sure. And I am, my body likes the cold weather better than the warm, for the most part. But I mean, man, it was 70, 75 and sunny today here in Austin. So it's, I mean, you can't knock that any time of the year.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Man.
But at the same time, you know, I'm going up to Whistler with a bunch of friends to get a taste of the winter for this next week. And then I go back home to New Hampshire. So I don't mind taking little samples of the winter and enjoying the sun for most of it.
Oh man, that's awesome. So is it humid or is it pretty dry down there?
It's definitely dry right now. It gets humid in the summer sometimes, in the spring and the fall a bit, but the winter is usually nice and dry, kind of like California this time of year.
That's awesome, man. I gotta head back down there. I drove through Dallas when I first moved out to the West Coast, and I didn't get to stay very long, so I got to get back down there.
Oh, anytime, man. Let's rock out.
That's incredible, man. So I guess that moves into my next question that I wanted to ask you about happiness, and I guess the 3 essentials, and I guess number 1 being the sun. So I guess what are the other 2?
I think the sun actually does make a big difference. Having been raised in New Hampshire, where sometimes you don't see the sun for 6 months, it does make a big difference. Just getting out there and feeling the vitamin D on your skin, you know, being synthesized. What else makes me happy? I think doing things that you love make you happy. So for me, what that means is always having music be a part of my daily routine and part of my life. I've been a professional musician, and growing up in the middle of nowhere, we didn't even have cable, and a lot of times electricity would go out, so we needed to find ways to entertain ourselves. And so my brother learned a bunch of instruments, but kind of stuck with the drums. And then I learned a bunch too and stuck with guitar and singing. And so music has always been something that allows me to get to a deep, peaceful state. You know, people talk about flow state, and that always seems to get me there, whether I'm playing it or just listening to it. So music is really important to me. That could be something completely different for someone else. It could be some other form of art, you know, reading. Learning is constantly, that's something that I need to do. I've found constantly to keep myself entertained, because this is kind of the opposite way of looking at it. But if I'm not constantly stimulated by some sort of, you know, learning a new skill or learning about something new, then I get bored. And when I'm bored, I'm unhappy. So it's that constant challenge. And then, man, if you're feeling low on energy or just kind of bummed out, the best thing you can do most of the time is get your butt outside, go for a little jog or a walk or do some sort of workout. And that always cheers me up. That's good stuff.
That's awesome, man. I wanted to talk about your book on music a little bit. I haven't got to read it yet, but how much can music actually, I know me personally, music is literally the core to my life, and I would not make it through without positive and, you know, soul-fulfilling music, and that's always what I try to go for. But how much of the brain does music actually affect?
All of it, pretty much. So I studied, for those people out there who might not know, I studied brain science in college, and my first book is called The Musical Brain. And the reason I got into it is because, having been raised the way that I was, with music being so important, like I've always said that if I didn't have music, I'd be absolutely insane. And I stand by that, because, you know, whenever something hard to deal with happened when I was younger, especially, the way that I would deal with it was by going into my room, shutting the door, and just cranking my guitar amplifier and playing as loud and as hard and as fast as I could until I just like fell down in a heap and started weeping. That was the only way that I could cry. And it was just this really sacred thing. When you look at what music actually does within the brain, is it lights the whole thing up like a light bulb. It's amazing. But there's a indelible link between music and language. And so when you listen to music itself, a lot of the same areas of the brain that you use to process language are being used or co-opted to process music. So you're actually getting a physiological response, like it can alter your heartbeat and level of arousal, as well as like emotional response based on the type of music that you're listening to. So music, it can do so many things for you and to you. It's really incredible stuff.
That's amazing, man. What is your favorite genre for anything? For
That's
stress,
kind of
I guess it depends on stress, energy, or whatever you're trying to go for.
Yeah, it does depend. What I like to start the day with is kind of laid back instrumental guitar music or piano music. And so a lot of times that'll be kind of jazzy or folk, but kind of think about the calm, low stress state that you want to be in the morning, and try to find music that kind of puts you there. You know, for most people, that's going to be a soft kind of, usually without lyrics, but sometimes with lyrics, a soft progressive beat that isn't overpowering and isn't shrill. It's relaxing. And so that's what I try to aim for in the morning. And usually I use music to psych myself down. And sometimes, occasionally, I'll use it to psych myself up if I'm doing a workout or something like that. But oftentimes it's just to kind of get me to that place where I'm relaxing.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and the intro music that I have to my podcast is something that kind of puts me in that mind state. It's a band called The Green. They're from Hawaii, and they have the, I don't know what it is, man. They have the vibe that just kind of sets my day off great. So,
And that's what you need to look for.
I'd love to do a whole nother podcast just on music, man, because I know that that's a huge part of your life and stuff. I wish I would have warned you before so you can get an acoustic guitar out and play for us on the podcast, man.
That'd be awesome. Well, I'm happy to come back anytime.
Yeah, we'll do it on the outro music next time.
Nice.
So yeah, man, that's awesome. Music is probably the number one thing in my life for sure too. So, and like you were talking about music motivating you and putting you in an energetic state too, and using it as a source for energy. What are your hacks, do you think, that you can use besides music to put into your fitness life?
Besides music, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's not difficult. It's just a matter of doing it. That's the number one. I was talking to someone else about this recently on one of the shows, and it's all about not focusing on those little things when you start a workout. For example, like you read one thing, one brand new spanking article about the most effective bench press ever, and it's about like moving it up explosively and then back down explosively. But then you read something else that's like, well, you need to do it to get maximum effect for at least 5 to 10 seconds up and then 25 seconds down. And it's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
The way that I psych myself up is just by doing it and not focusing on any of that stuff. Just getting out there, taking action, and focusing on big natural movements that increase functional strength. So sometimes it's just simple things like squats, pull-ups, push-ups, sprints. Just doing those things alone will get you huge results as long as you do them, and you do them consistently and often. That doesn't have to be every day, but it needs to be, for example, I was just sick for the first time in like 3 years. And I forced myself not to exercise for like 2 weeks. And I was worried that all my muscles would fall off and I'd get a huge gut and whatever. Right. Yeah. But I didn't. I don't usually go on the scale or anything like that, but I was just curious what happened after not exercising for that long. And my body fat is still in single digits, and I didn't even really lose any weight or lose any muscle. It was just what my body was supposed to be doing, recovering. So that's another one of the hacks. It's like you don't too many people, it's like binary, right? They're either exercising all the time or they're not exercising at all. And one of the hacks, I guess you could say, is always being somewhere in between, either recovering or exercising, right? And so I'll take days off. In fact, I'm not really exercising today at all. I'm going to take my dog for a walk after this show, but today I'm recovering because yesterday I had a big lifting day. The day before that, I was doing a lot of craft, and so it's important to both get that high intensity stuff and a lot of activity, as well as just taking a little bit of time off, letting your cortisol come down, and letting your body repair itself and regenerate.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because I think that rest is not looked upon as beneficial because people want results so fast. You know, like I said, everybody's in such a rush, and your program that you promote, it burns fat fast, and I think people want even faster than that, and they feel like resting is just not as important as actually doing all these new exercises that they've never done in their life. Yeah.
And it's so funny. I mean, if someone comes to me and they're just like, I want to lose 20 pounds this month, then, you know, depending on how much weight they're starting with, I can be like, well, we can do that, but why? You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's straightforward. It can be miserable if that's the reason that you're doing it, or doing it in a certain way, like starving yourself or exercising way too much. You can do it. You can lose weight. You can eat nothing but cabbage soup for a month and lose plenty of weight, but you're going to be miserable, and there's no way you can do that for the rest of your life. So it begs the question, why would you do it at all? You know, if it's just going to be futzing with your hormones and metabolism, you know, and putting you into starvation mode. It's much more effective to focus on making some actual changes to your lifestyle, building new habits, and watching your weight or your body composition improve over time for the rest of your life.
Right. That's awesome. And I think that it's not, I don't know if it's the mainstream TV shows or what it is that convinced everybody that the numbers are the only thing that matters. But in the meantime, I think it's just best to use fat loss and weight loss as a side effect of picking up all these new habits. Like you participating, is it like a form of, what is it, a taekwondo, jiu-jitsu?
The Krav Maga? Yeah, so it's built to be functional. Basically, it trains you what to do if someone attacks you on the street or at a bar fight or whatever. And so it's based on movements that would be instinctual. So it's really easy to learn for beginners. So it's mostly just like practical self-defense type stuff and beating the crap out of each other with sticks from time to time.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So would you say that's part of your fitness routine too? Do you work out on days that you're doing that, or is that your off day?
Yeah, that I definitely count it as part of my fitness routine because it's it can be pretty intense, and there's definitely cardio involved with it. So on the days that I'm doing that, I tend not to do a whole lot of exercise. In fact, usually I don't exercise at all. I'll just go on like a quick walk, or I'll do walking around, or like a bike ride. I try to be as active as I can every single day, but I don't do like a dedicated workout if I know that I'm going to be going to a class or two that night.
Right. Yeah. Do you think it makes you happier to get your exercise from walking and running and being outside, or do you participate in gym workouts and stuff like that too?
Yeah, I like never go to the gym. I have some weights at home and I throw those around, but I try to be outside as much as I possibly can. Aside, obviously, I think it's really important too that, some people can do that and that's what they enjoy. I'm one of those people, but other people really, like my mom's a Zumba instructor, and for especially a lot of her students who are women her age and some a little younger, some a little older, they love that group atmosphere and getting together and dancing and socializing. And that's really important too. So depending on what fits your lifestyle the best and what fits your personality, I just encourage people to get out there and move. But what you don't want is going to a gym and just be miserable. Like you're not going to do that forever. And if you do, then you're going to be miserable. So find something that you enjoy, or find a way to enjoy something that you want to do.
Right. And I think the classes are cool, man, because I think it brings people out of their shells, because when we live in an age of emails and text messaging and Skype and different stuff like that face-to-face contact almost seems awkward for some people now. So I think it's kind of like a self-confidence booster too for being in a group.
It is. And, for me, I mean, I spend as much time, probably more time as anyone on the internet, just because that's what I do now. I do this full time. And so I spend a lot of time on the internet in front of a computer, which I don't really even like to do because it's technology. I'd rather be outside playing.
Absolutely.
But building those new skills is super important. I found that, basically I dialed in my body composition. So I know I spend most of my time between like 9 and 12% body fat. I know how to make it lower if I want to. So now that I've kind of, I feel like I understand that piece of me and I can hone it the way that I want to. I felt like kind of bored for a while, like kind of like a cream puff. Even though I have muscle, I felt like I can't use it for anything fun or athletic. And so that's why I challenged myself to do this Krav class, because there's nothing like getting the crap beat out of you by like a 5'1" girl. No offense to them, of course. Like my girlfriend is about that size, but like you go into a class like that, and obviously I outweigh a lot of the people who are 100-pound girls by 70 pounds. But there's nothing more humbling than getting the crap beat out of you by someone like that. It's awesome. It's a new experience. You're taking a little bit of skin off of your knuckles and you're moving your body in ways that you never have before. And you get this huge boost of confidence, and it's all in good fun. You're doing it with other people who are there because they want to learn. And that's a blast. I mean, my partner, what was it, last night or the night before, was like 6'3", this enormous person. And then my partner was like this girl who was 5'1". And it's just super cool to interact and have fun together and learn new stuff.
That's awesome, man. And I guarantee that you're feeling a strong connection when you're being physical and stuff like that. I feel like we evolved to play physically too. And
yeah,
I think to have that physical contact and be able to, I don't know, I feel like it's just a very grounding action. It
is. Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, I need to get into a class like that, man. That sounds awesome. Either that or I thought about jiu-jitsu. I used to do taekwondo, and I realized how silly it was, and it's like it's a complete ripoff, but, that was but that was many years ago, and my parents were paying for it, so that doesn't really count, but but I was thinking about getting into that, man. So that's definitely motivating me too now.
I'd highly recommend it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I guess what are things that we should be doing to start this positive shift? I mean, I love the platform of a podcast, and I love to be able to talk to inspiring people and motivating people like you. But I think that if you get caught up reading all the articles and all the how-tos and listening to all the podcasts and not acting, I think that's something that could hold you back. And I talked about this on my intro podcast. I told people that you have to remember that internet inspiration it's so easy to get caught up in all the different inspiring quotes and stuff like that, but people don't apply it. That it just gets retweeted or sent to Pinterest or something like that. But I think you could get confused with real progress. So, what are a couple things that we should do right now just to jump out the door and get going?
If we really want to expand this, we need to avoid the incestuous nature of like the ancestral health community, right? Like it's tempting just to kind of hang out with each other, but we're all preaching to the choir. What we really need to challenge ourselves to do is lead by example to people who might not be following this yet, And so what that means is don't go around preaching to everyone about this, but like I said, lead by example. Just by being a healthy, happy person, people are going to, especially in your friend group and in your family, they're going to look around and be like, wow, it looks like this person really has it together. I wonder what they're doing. And then they ask you what you're doing. And you're just like, well, I'm not really eating grains and I don't eat food in boxes. And they're just like, what? You must be crazy. No pasta, no bread. You're totally insane. I could never do that. And then they see you a couple months later and, they come up to you and they're just like, well, maybe there's something to this. I saw that guy, Dr. Bill Davis on Dr. Oz not too long ago. Then I read his book, Wheat Belly, and I tried not eating grains for a while and I lost 10 pounds. And then they tell all their friends, and so that's what it's about. It's about not being overbearing at all, but just like making sure that you're healthy yourself, that you have it dialed in yourself, and then based upon what you've learned and the progress that you've made, if people ask you questions about what you're doing, just like tell them what you're doing and try to spread it as much as you can. Support local farmers. That's another huge one. Go to farmers markets. Even if Walmart has an organic section, try to go to the farmers market instead. That's where you're actually going to be supporting the local people. And that's what we need if we want any hope of getting away from this centralized industrial food manufacturing structure that we have right now, going back to the smaller scale local farms that raise healthy, fresh food for us all. So that's another huge thing that people can do right away.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like 2013 is the shift in local and different types of shopping? I mean, do you think that this is the biggest shift towards a more local shopping with your fruit and stuff? I mean, is this the turning point of something to come, or?
I think it can be. I hope so. One of the reasons that my podcast blew up so much, I think, is because this is a time when people are starting to think about this stuff very seriously. And if we stick with it, then I think we're literally able to change the world in the way that we think about food, the way that food is created, the way that animals are raised. So now is a very, very critical time. Like paleo and ancestral health is getting to the point where people are starting to talk about it, and it like you can't ignore it anymore. Conventional media is just like they try to push it to the sidelines and dismiss it as the worst diet ever. But I think people are starting to realize that there really is something to it. The more that we focus on practicing what we preach, the more hope we'll all have. You know, don't just, I mean, maybe it'll help to give some retweets to an inspiring quote about eating bacon or whatever, but actually like going and shaking a farmer's hand is going to make a heck of a lot more of a difference, you know? And try to focus on cooking. This is another great way to get other people into it who might not otherwise, is like have a dinner party and have people over who might not eat that way and just make really delicious food for them. And don't even tell them at the beginning, but by the end, they're just like, wow, that was a delicious dinner. Those are wonderful desserts. And you're just like, yeah, they're all totally paleo. It's like, joke's on you.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think I'm going to end up trying to do a book in the future on growing your own food, because I love that. I think it's important. My buddy Andy, he's got a 5-acre farm not too far away from me, and hopefully he's got some raspberries that are going to be coming up, and he planted an almond tree. So I think that it's very inspiring, man, because it seems just out of the picture, and some people don't consider it. I know a lot of people in California. I had friends there that tell me they had limes and lemons growing in their backyard, and they had an abundance of fruit. But I just don't feel like the mainstream foods that paleo is wanting. I think we're still dealing with like a little bit of price hike. I think the prices are going to come down in the future too, because I don't know if you're getting this, but a lot of people are asking, how can I afford all of these foods? Yeah. And I feel like places like Illinois, I drove through there and it was nothing but corn, man. I mean, everywhere you look was corn. I'm like, man, how many years is it going to take for this corn to be replaced with a massive field of green beans or kale or something like that, you know? So, are you getting a lot of people asking about budgeting and stuff like that? And do you have any special tips for that?
Yeah, they do. And it's a valid question. I mean, I had $50 in my bank account and plenty more in debt for the majority of my life, especially after paying my way through college. But so I know what it's like to be, especially being a musician and a starving artist. I know what it's like to not be able to go out to dinner or spend a lot on food. But at the same time, like most people are able to find money to buy a new TV or buy trinkets or whatever. I mean, people spend their money on all sorts of things these days. And for me, the biggest shift happened when I started making food my first priority. And so like the dinner that I mentioned last night, having the lamb and the dino kale with macadamia nut and the sweet potatoes. If I add that up, so we have, I ate it with my girlfriend. the lamb itself was a generous helping, and I think the total cost, and it's grass-fed lamb, really good stuff, was $9. So we split that in half for 2 people, right? And we had a little bit of leftover, and then the sweet potato was probably like $1, and then the salad was probably like another $1. So if you look at it that way, that's a dinner, a luxurious dinner for about $10. Cut in half, that's $5 a plate. I mean, people say that they don't have food or money for food, but can you think of a better meal than that for $5? Like, I can't. You know what I mean?
No way.
So if you're talking about, you know, I think it comes down to the way that you think about spending money on food more than anything else. And one thing that's really tough for humans, myself included, is when you know that you can buy a dozen eggs at Walmart for $1.25, then why would you go to the natural food store and buy a dozen eggs for $6? And the reason for that is because the eggs that you're getting for $6 don't have a bunch of chemicals in them. They don't, you know, the hens are healthy. They're not fed on GMOs and a bunch of chemicals and arsenic and crap. It's what you're eating is high quality stuff. And when you think about the amount of food that you get for even $6, if you spend $6 on a dozen eggs, that's a lot of food for $6. Now there are ways you can actually whittle down the amount you're spending on food too. One great way to do it is if you do have local farms. Most of them allow you to go pick weeds for a half a day, whatever, and they'll send you home with a big old box of veggies and sometimes meats and dairy and whatever else you can find there. And so that's a great option for people. Growing it in your own backyard is an awesome option, even if it's just like a few tomatoes. Like, at least you're eating fresh tomatoes and you don't have to go buy the crappy, disgusting ones from the store.
Right.
And it's just a matter of being thrifty with the way you look at it. Here in Austin, we have Whole Foods, which a lot of people call whole paycheck because every time you go there, it's at least $300.
Yeah.
So I do enjoy going there. They have a lot of great options, but it's super expensive. But just down the road, there's a place called Natural Grocers, which has all organic produce. They actually put their nuts and seeds in the freezer, which is what you're supposed to do. And it's almost impossible to find that these days, it seems like. But they do it right. And their prices are, I don't know, 50, 66% of what Whole Foods is a lot of the time. So it's just a matter of going to the places where stuff is cheaper. And sometimes, you know, like for example, at Natural Grocers, the raw almond butter is like $17. But at Whole Foods, the same thing is $12. But the bacon at Natural Grocers is $4, and at Whole Foods, it's $9. So it's like, get the nuts from Natural Grocers and the bacon from the other place. You know what I mean? So it's like sometimes a matter of just being diligent of going to the places where it costs less for the same high quality stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I noticed that too, the same thing with Trader Joe's and Whole Foods. There's a couple different things that I buy. I think that Trader Joe's has an awesome nut selection. There's some that have canola oil in them, though. Some of the Trek mixes and stuff like that. But, you know, I guess it depends how reactive you are to it. I know that you had Lauren Cordain on the podcast, and he was talking about just his changing opinion on canola oil. But I guess maybe in tiny doses, do you think it'd be okay or no?
Yeah, the way I see it is that there are good things and bad things in almost any food that you eat. Canola oil is something I always try to avoid as much as possible. And I would encourage other people to avoid it as well, because the vast majority of the canola oil that's out there is GMO. It's been subjected to bleaching, degumming, and all these chemical processes, and it's full of junk and usually rancid. But at the same time, you can find like expeller pressed canola oil that's all organic and really good stuff, or the best that canola oil could possibly be. And if you have a little bit of that every once in a while, that's fine. You know, it's not a big deal. You could be doing a lot worse, but it's not something that I would ever advocate you look out for and try to put into your body. But if it's attached to an otherwise good bag of nuts or something like that, then, you know, go for it. Don't worry about it too much.
Right. That's awesome, man. Did you have some sugar cravings when you first switched over, and do you still have sugar cravings now? I know a lot of people are going to be experiencing that if they're new to this.
Yeah. So I have sugar cravings if I eat sugar, but if I don't eat sugar, then I don't. And it's really as simple as that. When you're, I'm actually training a bodybuilder right now for the Austin Shredder, and he's, let's see, about 11 weeks out now, and he usually eats 250, 300 plus grams of carbs a day, and he's a big dude. But we took him down to, I think he's like less than 20, 30 most days now, and we're cycling carbs for him a little bit. But yeah, for the first week, he's just like, man, I'm feeling pretty low on energy. I don't know if this is going to work. And just kind of like being down about it. I'm just like, don't worry about it. This always happens at the beginning. Once you make that shift, and I mean, going from 300 to 20, that's a huge shift. You know, like most people don't do it that way. You don't have to do it that drastically. You can kind of whittle it down over time, and that's fine. But for him, it's the end of the first week. I got a text from him today, and actually we talked on the phone too. He's lost 9 pounds, and he went from like 12% body fat down to 9 already in the first week, just by making some of those changes. So, I mean, this stuff works. And the most important thing is that he's feeling better too. He said he had his best workout he's had in months, and he's pretty much fueling just with fat now. So that's pretty freaking cool.
That's insane. So do you think that he made that shift that fast, or was it because he already had previous bodybuilding experience? Like, how did he go from so high to so low and still maintain energy? Because I crashed when I first started reducing my carbs. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he did kind of crash at the beginning, but he's starting to be a fat burner now. You know, he's using fat far more effectively, and just hanging out with me, he's been eating more anyway over time. So he can get away because he's such a big guy. He's like the size of Clay Matthews. Like he's a football guy. So like he can afford to eat a ton of carbs and not have it be a big deal just because of the sheer amount of mass that he has and calories that he burns. But making that shift for him was hard at first, but after about 6 or 7 days now, he's feeling great. So yeah, he said he even got a little bit of a headache, and a lot of times that happens because you store your toxins within your fat cells. And so once you start burning fat, this is a really good thing, but you feel like crap. Once you start burning fat, those toxins are actually released because you burn the fat itself, and then the toxins are just left in your bloodstream, like cycling out until you excrete them, which usually takes some time. And so when anyone first starts that process of taking down the carbs and turning up the fat, a lot of times you feel that just all that junk in your system being released and then excreted. And that's a natural part of the process, and really important because you don't want that stuff hanging out in your body. You want to get rid of it as fast as possible.
Right.
So it's a painful way to do it, but it's also a really necessary thing for most people to do.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And do you have any certain supplement that you favor? I mean, I think that a paleo diet is a great way to supplement your body in itself, but do you have a favorite capsule or vitamin that you prefer?
Sure. I take cod liver oil. Being in Austin, it's really hard to get fresh fish, especially finding affordable fresh fish. So that's one thing that I do to get vitamin D, vitamin A, and some essential fatty acids, especially omega-3s. That's a good, reliable source for that. Big fan of vitamin D3. I take magnesium. Let's see, selenium, or I eat Brazil nuts when I can get them and they're not all moldy and rancid.
Yeah.
Alpha lipoic acid, big fan of that, and a few others, you know. But yeah, you want to get it from your food first, and then use supplements to supplement. Not as like you take supplements so you can eat whatever you want. No, you eat real food and you just kind of round it out as much as you can with supplements. Actually, I'm pretty excited. I was just out in California, and I got this. I signed up for this thing. I can't even remember off the top of my head, but it's a startup, and they basically send you a kit to test your blood once a month. And I signed up for 3 years. I think I'm going to be starting in April, and just testing all of your different levels of the amounts of certain hormones in your blood, your different biomarkers, as well as how much you need from certain supplements. So I'm really excited to write some blog posts about that because, right now I'm kind of doing it blind to a degree. You can assume that you're deficient in some certain vitamin or mineral based upon the symptoms that you have. But if you actually take a look at the blood work, then that can be pretty interesting too. So I'm going to be walking people through my process there.
That's awesome. I'm going to have to send those articles. You have to send those articles, and I'll post a little bit about them on my site too, because
cool.
I think that's awesome. Do you know the name of the company, or we can put it in the show notes later?
Yeah, I'll get it from my email. I don't recall off the top of my head, but there are a couple out there that do similar things, and they're popping up all the time because they know that, especially with like the quantified self movement that's going on, especially in like the San Francisco area, they're all geeking out on that stuff. Yeah. Those ways to measure your own biomarkers at home are starting to pop up everywhere. So that's really good news.
Yeah, I think in the next 5 or 10 years, we'll basically be able to do those at home, and I think the technology is going to keep expanding with self-test and all that stuff. It's awesome, man.
Totally. One that I just did that I'd recommend other people check out. It's some might say it's expensive, but I think for what you get, it's really pretty cool. It's let's see, I think it was about $320. I did the LEAP MRT test, which measures your food sensitivities, and that was very revealing. The things that I'm both not allergic to or I am allergic to, because it's not the ones that I was expecting at all.
Right. Yeah, you talked about that in your podcast with Dave Asprey, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
So people should definitely check that episode out too.
Absolutely. And he's a goofball and a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Yeah, he's a cool guy. I'm going to get him on here in a couple weeks, hopefully. I'd love to. Get into nootropics, and that's a whole nother category. It's just, I'm trying to figure out if, the majority of people are new to supplements or if a lot of people are comfortable. What do you think your fan base is?
I'd say half and half. A lot of people have probably never really taken supplements seriously, and then there are some of the meatheads who spend their time in the gym who've taken pretty much everything on earth. Right now, I like taking. I've been experimenting with a few nootropics, and it's been really interesting. Most of them don't do anything, but a couple of them do, and that's kind of cool to find a new way to alter your state of being or your state of mind or your state of performance. So that's always fun to dabble in the fringes and see what you can pull out of there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Did you say you were choline deficient?
No, it seems from what I can tell, I'm choline dominant. So when I take Aniracetam, for example, sometimes I'll take half a tab of choline, but usually I won't, because at the beginning when I was taking it with a full tab of choline, I was starting to get a little twitch in my eye and in my leg, which I don't usually get. I haven't experienced that in a few years since I really cleaned up my diet. So yeah, that's one thing that is highly individualized. Like some people are acetylcholine dominant and others are not. And all signs point to me being dominant.
Right. Yeah. And if we're speaking another language right now, basically nootropics are just vitamins for your brain, so they can enhance the way that you focus. They can enhance just energy levels, and I think they're very useful. They've been around for about 50, 60 years. I think the 1950s is when paracetam was coming out. Is that right?
I think that's right, yeah.
So these are highly researched chemicals, and they are beneficial. And I know that they've been using some nootropics. I'll have to post up the article about it, of helping people with Alzheimer's. And it sounds incredible, but there's a supplement called Noopept, and it's basically the bigger brother, I guess, of paracetam, and it's supposed to be many, many times stronger, and they've literally been treating and possibly curing Alzheimer's with it. So I have to post the research up on that, because it's amazing, and I think that not a lot of people know about them. And
yeah.
When I know when I tell my family, at least, they think nootropics, what are those drugs, and why are you putting that in your body? And
yeah,
very rarely do I take them, but they do have a huge effect on just kind of resetting your brain, I think.
Yeah, it can be fascinating. I have a cupboard full of them, and I've tried a whole bunch. And when you think about it, I mean, it is in a way inherently scary to think of a drug or a substance or a supplement affecting the way that you think in any way. But when you actually take a step back and think about it, I mean, the first time you had a cup of coffee, that definitely affected you. First time you had a glass of wine, that certainly has a mental effect, and a lot of prescription drugs do as well. And certain supplements can make you feel great. Other ones can make you feel like junk. So it's all about finding something that works with your own individualized biology, your own brain chemistry. And a lot of that comes from trial and error. And most of these things that you can buy, nootropics and as well as beyond, if they're available, they're at least not extraordinarily damaging, right? Like most of them, I don't want to say that they're all perfectly 100% safe, because there are definitely exceptions, but most of them are.
Right, yeah. It sucks that we have to try to convince people that supplements are okay, because when you have people that are used to prescription drugs,
right?
You know, people will more willingly take a pill from their doctor rather than a supplement or an herb. And I'm not sure when that shift is going to change. I think that this is probably the year for that also. It's just people are trusting supplements because, I mean, the pills and all the different doctors out there, it's kind of scary what's going on out there.
Yeah, it is. That's one thing that's really important. Most of the prescription drugs are a lot higher power than the stuff you could buy over the counter or from Amazon or whatever. And so just because you're getting a pill from a doctor, don't assume that it's safe either. So it kind of goes both ways. What I'm trying to say is that you should take your own health under your own responsibility. You know, if your doctor tries to prescribe you something, it's your responsibility to look it up and see if it's actually something that you want to be putting in your body. Because a lot of times these prescriptions are more optional than you think.
Yeah. I talked about it in the last episode. I actually got my mom off of blood pressure medicine. And
oh, that's great.
She was on that for several years, and I basically just cleaned up her diet and basically reduced grains, and her blood pressure was back to normal. So,
good for you. That's awesome.
So it's a great feeling, and I think a lot of people get weirded out because vitamins and herbs and supplements have to say the FDA did not approve it. And I don't know why you would trust the FDA in the first place after, just look at the history. And if you're still trusting the FDA and you're worried about that label that says they're not intended to treat or cure or diagnose, understand that that's there for other reasons than it's not safe.
Right.
So, well, and also I'm so glad that you mentioned alcohol and caffeine and how if you're not used to supplements and you're judging supplements and not thinking that they're beneficial or if they sound dangerous or anything like that, alcohol and caffeine are far more addicting and have far more negative side effects than any of these supplements that you or I would ever recommend.
Yeah, oftentimes that's the case. I mean, alcohol is one nasty drug if you don't have it under control.
Beneficial aspect of it, I guess, besides a social lubricant, but I don't even that's not even worth that, you know.
Yeah, I do enjoy wine and a scotch from time to time, but I don't enjoy being drunk. One thing that I do like about I guess it is a social lubricant, but more than that for me, especially being super high-strung, productive, at least as a goal of every day. It's a nice, with dinner, it's a nice shift to a more relaxed state of being for me. And I like the taste of wine and that sort of thing. But it's a lot. Actually, one of my best friends here in Austin won't touch it, hasn't touched it since he was 17. And I think that's great because if you can't handle having just a little bit, or going out of control or, not going out of control, then it's not something that you should be working into your habits one bit. Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's safe either, especially if you're overdoing it, which unfortunately a lot of people do.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Abel. That's awesome, man. And reducing it is going to make you feel better mentally too. I mean, it sets you back too on your fitness goals, and it takes a long time to recover, I feel like.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. When I was more serious about my running and my times, I had this cool GPS watch that would be able to track your pace as you were running. And even the nights when, or the days when the nights before I'd had 1 or 2 glasses of wine, my times were so much off from where they normally are. It's amazing how much it can stress your body and definitely downregulate your performance in big ways.
That's insane, man. I've never documented the difference like that. I can't believe it was that drastic.
Totally. I mean, well, when you think about it, it's not like you have a hangover or you don't. It's more, it's a scale, right? It's a sliding scale. It's a spectrum. And so even if you don't really feel it that much the next day, there are a lot of ways that you can actually even measure it in your nervous system and physiology, because it continues to alter you even the next day.
Wow, man. Well, I would say if you are drinking and that's just a part of your lifestyle and for some reason you don't want to eliminate it, do you recommend some kind of hangover supplement or anything like that? Not to support their habits or anything, but...
No, what I recommend is that, especially having been a musician for as long as I have, you're introduced to pretty much every alcohol there is on the planet. And what I've found is that... number one, you want to avoid sugar as much as possible. And what that means also is avoiding generally most beer, because that's high in sugar and higher in carbs. And those are the things that are going to make you feel like junk the next day. So I avoid beer for the most part. I'll have a little bit, especially if it's homemade every once in a while. But you also want to go for high quality alcohols. Also, the ones that are lower cost, like the rail drinks or the cheap shots that you get at bars, are generally, if you get tequila or whiskey, a lot of times it just has a little bit of tequila or whiskey in it. So the bare minimum, so that they can actually call it tequila or whiskey, but it's mostly made of crappy grain alcohol, and it's going to give you a terrible hangover. So instead of getting really cheap, disgusting vodka, go for the higher quality stuff, the top shelf stuff, and just drink less of it. And that makes a huge difference the next day. I've never found, I think, for thousands of years, people have been searching for the perfect supplement or hangover cure. And there really isn't one that I've found. Drink plenty of water and just drink less the night before. Yeah. And drink the good stuff too. It's important to, more than drinking the good stuff, it's important to avoid the cheap stuff, the bad stuff, because that will definitely make you feel pretty awful the next day.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm glad you brought it home with reduce your consumption.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, I think we're about on the end of the episode, but this was awesome. I had a blast, man.
Awesome. Me too. Thanks a lot, Evan.
Is there anything that you'd like to leave anybody with? We'll get them back over to your website at fatburningman.com. Is that the best place to go?
That's the best place to go, yeah.
Your site is beautiful. There's some free downloads I found on there, and you got the Wild Diet book on there, so it's awesome. I need to get a copy of that book, so.
I'll shoot it over to you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, anytime, my friend.
And I guess I will talk to you all soon. And maybe we can get into some specific questions next time about just anything, man. So thank you again.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Evan.
All right, man. I'll see you.
He acts like it's all good, yeah, like everything's cool. Kiss her and then he leaves her. She doesn't have a clue that he's terrible news. Why I'm in a tie, I got to watch out, girl. Don't wanna see her cry her eyes out, girl. Cause I've been watching, you've been hurting. Let me be the one that loves you better.